Evelyn Morgan woke up in her home on Mill Avenue at 6:30 in the morning, just as she had done every day for the past 30 years. The Sonoran desert sun was already beginning to warm the air, promising another scorching day in Tempe. At 60, she still got up early, not out of necessity, but out of habit. The habit of a woman who had built a business from scratch and had no intention of slowing down. Her Desert Health pharmacy chain included 8 locations throughout the Phoenix Valley. What began as a small family pharmacy on University Drive in 1995 had grown into a thriving business with annual sales of several $1,000,000. Evelyn was proud that she had been able to maintain a personal touch with each customer even after the expansion. 3 years ago, her world was turned upside down. Gerald, her husband of 40 years and business partner, died of a sudden heart attack right in the main office. Doctors said the stress of running a growing company and the Arizona heat had taken their toll. Evelyn was left alone with the business, the house, and a void that seemed impossible to fill. Her doctor, Michael Stein, had been insisting for 2 years that she get more exercise. "Evelyn, you spend 12 hours a day at the office, and when you get home, all you do is read financial reports. Your body needs activity, especially after the loss of Gerald. Find a gym, hire a trainer." She ignored this advice for a long time. The gym seemed like a place for the young and beautiful, not for a 60-year-old widow who was overweight and had arthritis. But when her tests in January 2024 showed high cholesterol and blood pressure problems, Evelyn decided it was time to take action. Elite Fitness Temp was located in a new shopping center on Ruby Road, just a 10-minute drive from her home. The gym was modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and air conditioning that made working out in the Arizona heat possible. Evelyn signed up for personal training, deciding that at her age, it was best not to experiment on her own. She was assigned Marcus Taylor as her trainer. The first thing that struck Evelyn when she met him on Monday morning, January 15th, was his smile. It was genuine, broad, the kind that lit up his whole face. Marcus was a tall, athletic young man with dark hair and hazel eyes. At 20 years old, he had already been working as a personal trainer for 3 years and, according to the gym manager, specialized in working with older clients. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm Marcus. I'll be your trainer for the foreseeable future," he said, extending his hand, and his handshake was firm but not too strong. "Tell me about your goals and what brought you here." Evelyn was impressed by his professionalism. Marcus listened attentively to her story about her health problems, the loss of her husband, and her sedentary lifestyle. He didn't interrupt or give hasty advice, just listened, nodding occasionally and asking clarifying questions. "I understand this is a difficult time for you," he said when she finished. "But you know what? The fact that you're here is already a huge step. Many people in your situation just give up, but you're fighting." Their first workout was gentle, light stretching exercises, walking on the treadmill, basic movements with minimal weights. Marcus constantly monitored her well-being, reminded her to drink water, and corrected her technique. Evelyn felt clumsy and embarrassed, but Marcus encouraged her every step of the way. "Excellent, Mrs. Morgan. See how your posture has already improved? And your breathing is more even. You're doing it right." After the workout, they sat in the lounge, and Evelyn decided to learn more about her young trainer. Marcus told her that he grew up in East Temple, a neighborhood Evelyn knew as not the most affluent. His mother worked as a cashier at a supermarket, and he didn't know his father. His older sister Jamie was a nurse at Banner Desert Hospital, the only one in the family to have a college degree. "I've always loved sports," Marcus said, sipping a protein shake. "I played football in high school, but I didn't get a scholarship to college. So I went to study coaching at a local technical college. I dream of one day opening my own gym specializing in rehabilitation and fitness for older people." Evelyn was touched by his honesty. In a world where she was used to business talk and financial reports, the young man's simple sincerity was a breath of fresh air. The workouts became regular, 3 times a week in the mornings. Marcus was always punctual, prepared, and attentive. He remembered details from their previous conversations, asked how she was feeling, and took an interest in her day. Gradually, Evelyn began to notice improvements. She started sleeping better, had more energy, and even found her workdays easier to get through. By the end of February, their relationship had gone beyond that of trainer and client. Marcus began to linger after workouts, and they would chat about life, share plans and experiences. Evelyn talked about the challenges of running a business and how difficult it was to make decisions alone after 40 years of working with her husband. Marcus listened attentively and asked questions that helped her see her problems from a different perspective. "You know, Mrs. Morgan," he said one day in early March as they strolled through the park next to the gym after a particularly intense workout. "You are an incredibly strong woman. What you have built, how you handle everything on your own, it's inspiring." At that moment, something changed. Evelyn felt her heart beat faster, and it wasn't from the physical exertion. She looked at Marcus, a handsome, caring young man who treated her not as a client or an elderly woman, but as an interesting conversation partner and a human being. "Marcus," she began, but he interrupted her. "Can I just call you Evelyn?" "Mrs. Morgan sounds too formal for what we have." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Their first date took place on March 20th at a small cafe on Mill Avenue. Marcus insisted on paying for dinner, despite her protests. They talked late into the night about books, movies, and dreams. Evelyn learned that Marcus read biographies of successful entrepreneurs and admired people who had built something meaningful from scratch. "Like you, Evelyn," he said, looking into her eyes. "You started with one small pharmacy and built an empire. That's amazing." During dinner, Rose McGregor, an old acquaintance of Evelyn's and her former neighbor, approached their table. Seeing Evelyn's handsome young companion, she couldn't hide her surprise. "Evelyn! What a surprise! Who's this?" Her voice betrayed her curiosity. "Rose, meet Marcus. Marcus, this is Rose, an old friend." Marcus stood up and gallantly shook the woman's hand. "It's very nice to meet you, Rose. Evelyn has told me a lot about you." After Rose left, clearly intending to share the news with all their mutual acquaintances immediately, Evelyn felt embarrassed. "Marcus, I understand that this may seem strange. The age difference between us..." "Evelyn," he took her hand across the table. "Age is just a number. What matters is how we feel about each other, and I feel something special for you." In the weeks that followed, their relationship developed rapidly. Marcus began to visit her home, helping with minor repairs and cooking dinner. He was attentive, romantic, and always knew how to cheer her up after a difficult day. Evelyn felt young and desirable for the first time in many years. The reaction of those around her was predictable. Robert Harris, her lawyer and family friend, was openly concerned. "Evelyn, be careful," he said during their meeting in April. "I don't want to sound cynical, but a young man may be interested in more than just your feelings." Pharmacy employees whispered when Marcus came to her office. Some regular customers asked direct questions about her young friend. But Evelyn was happy for the first time in 3 years, and she wasn't going to let other people's opinions ruin that feeling. The only person whose opinion really mattered to Marcus was his sister Jamie. When he introduced her to Evelyn in May, the meeting was tense. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Evelyn," Jamie said politely but coldly. After dinner, when Evelyn had gone to the bathroom, Jamie spoke frankly with her brother. "Marcus, what are you doing? That woman could be your grandmother." "Jamie, you don't understand. Evelyn is special. She's smart, successful, caring." "And rich," his sister added. "Don't think I don't see what's going on." But Evelyn heard their conversation. Standing in the hallway, she felt her heart tighten with pain. Did everyone around her think that Marcus was only with her for her money? The July heat in Tempe was particularly brutal in 2024. The thermometers read 47 degrees in the shade, and even early in the morning, the air was so hot that it was difficult to breathe. Evelyn was sitting in her air-conditioned office on the first floor of the main pharmacy, reviewing quarterly reports, when there was a knock at the door. Marcus entered with a bouquet of white roses and a nervous smile. In the 6 months of their relationship, Evelyn had learned to read his moods, and right now he was clearly nervous. "Evelyn, I have something important to talk to you about," he said, placing the flowers on her desk and sitting down across from her. "The last few months have changed my life. You've changed my life." Evelyn's heart began to race. After that conversation with Jamie in May, she had tried not to think about Marcus's motives, convincing herself that his care and attention couldn't be fake. But the doubts remained. "I know what people say about us," Marcus continued, taking her hands in his. "About our age difference, about how we're from different worlds. But I don't care, Evelyn. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Marry me." He took out a small box with a ring, not too expensive but elegant, with a small diamond. Evelyn knew that on a fitness trainer's salary, it probably cost him several months of savings. Marcus. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to say yes. She was happy with him. She felt alive and wanted. But another part remembered Jamie's words and Robert's warnings. "I understand that this is sudden," Marcus said, seeing her hesitation. "And I understand your doubts. But think about what we've built together. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. Just think about it." Evelyn took the ring. It was beautiful, and when Marcus slipped it onto her finger, it fit perfectly. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Marcus. I'll marry you." His face lit up with such joy that all her doubts melted away. Marcus hugged her, and in that moment, Evelyn knew she had made the right decision. The news of their engagement spread through Tempe like wildfire. The reactions were predictably varied. The pharmacy staff congratulated Evelyn, but she could see the doubt in their eyes. Regular customers either remained silent or made awkward comments about how wonderful it was that she had found love again. Robert Harris requested an urgent meeting. "Evelyn, as your lawyer and friend, I have to express my concerns," he said in his office on University Avenue, where the air conditioner was running at full blast but still couldn't completely cope with the heat. "A prenuptial agreement is a necessity. Robert, I understand your concern, but Evelyn, your business is worth over $8 million. You have real estate, investments, retirement funds, a young man who has known you for only 6 months. His name is Marcus," Evelyn interrupted. "And he's not some adventurer. He works. He has plans for the future. On a trainer's salary of $22,000 a year?" Robert raised an eyebrow. "Evelyn, be realistic. Let's draw up a prenuptial agreement that will protect your assets. If his intentions are honest, he won't object." Evelyn agreed to the prenuptial agreement, but when she discussed it with Marcus, his reaction surprised her. "Of course, Evelyn. I understand why this is important to you," he said without the slightest irritation. "I'm not marrying you for your money. Have your lawyer draw up whatever document will put your mind at ease." This reaction only strengthened her conviction that she had made the right decision. A man with selfish motives would have resisted, but Marcus was understanding and mature. The wedding preparations took 2 months. Evelyn wanted a modest ceremony. A lavish celebration would have seemed inappropriate in their situation. They decided to hold the ceremony at her house on Mill Avenue, inviting only their closest friends and family. During this time, Marcus began to take more interest in her work. He started dropping by the pharmacy, getting to know the staff, and asking about their daily operations. "You know, Evelyn," he said one evening in August, as they sat by the pool in her backyard, enjoying the rare, cool breeze. "I think you're underestimating the potential of your business. These pharmacies could offer more services: nutrition counseling, fitness programs for diabetics and heart patients." Evelyn was impressed by his interest and understanding. "Those are interesting ideas, Marcus. You really have a knack for business." "I read a lot about current trends in healthcare," he replied. "After we get married, maybe I could help you expand your business, bring a fresh perspective." The wedding took place on September 15th, 2024. The day was surprisingly comfortable for September in Tempe, only 38 degrees, which locals considered almost cool. The ceremony was officiated by Judge Thomas Morrison, an old friend of the family. Robert Harris was present as Evelyn's witness, Jamie as Marcus's witness, several close friends, and senior managers from the pharmacy. Evelyn wore an elegant cream dress, Marcus a dark blue suit, which she suspected he had bought especially for the occasion. He looked handsome and was so adorably nervous that her last doubts were completely dispelled. "Do you promise, Marcus, to love, honor, and care for Evelyn in sickness and in health, in wealth and in poverty, until death do you part?" asked the judge. "I do," Marcus replied, looking Evelyn straight in the eyes. When they exchanged rings and kissed, Evelyn felt a rush of happiness she hadn't felt in years. She was a wife again, no longer alone. Jamie congratulated them, but her smile was forced. Robert was polite but reserved. However, Evelyn was too happy to let their doubts spoil her day. After the wedding, Marcus moved into Evelyn's house. He didn't have much stuff, a few boxes of clothes, some sports equipment, books on fitness and business. He took up half of her large closet and turned one of the guest rooms into a home gym. The first weeks of marriage were a honeymoon. Marcus was attentive and romantic. He cooked healthy breakfasts, massaged her tired shoulders after long days at work, and planned evening walks in Papago Park when the heat subsided a little. But gradually, Evelyn began to notice changes. Marcus started showing up at her office more often, asking questions about the company's finances, and suggesting meetings with suppliers and partners. At first, it seemed like a natural interest in his wife's work, but over time, his questions became more specific. "Evelyn, I saw the third quarter income report on your desk," he said one day in October. "The profits are impressive, but I think we're losing money on inefficient logistics. If we move the warehouse from Chandler to Mesa, we could save at least $20,000 a year." "We?" Evelyn asked. "Well, I meant the company. Sorry, I got carried away. But seriously, I could help optimize some processes. I have some ideas." Evelyn was touched by his desire to help, but something in his tone alarmed her. It wasn't an offer of help from a loving husband. It sounded more like a claim to a role in management. In November, Marcus suggested that she add him as a signatory on some of the company's bank accounts. "For convenience," he explained. "If something happens to you, someone needs to have access to the accounts, so operations don't grind to a halt." "We have Robert for that," Evelyn replied. "And Susan, the financial director." "But I'm your husband," Marcus said. And for the first time, a note of irritation crept into his voice. "Isn't it logical for a spouse to have access to family finances?" Evelyn felt uncomfortable. "Marcus, these aren't family finances. This is a business I've built over 30 years. Our business now," he corrected. "We're married." The tone he used made Evelyn's blood run cold. At that moment, she saw something in Marcus's eyes for the first time that reminded her of Robert's warnings and Jamie's words. That evening, she called Robert. "Robert, I need your advice. Marcus is asking for access to the corporate accounts." "No way," the lawyer replied sharply. "Evelyn, he's been your husband for 2 months, and he's already demanding control over your assets. This is exactly what I warned you about. He's not demanding, he's just suggesting. Evelyn, open your eyes. A young man with no education and no money married a rich woman twice his age. Now he wants access to her money. It's a classic scheme." After talking to Robert, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay next to Marcus, who was sleeping peacefully, and thought about the last few months. Could all his courtship, attention, and romance have been just a carefully planned game? The next day, she noticed how Marcus studied the documents on her desk when he thought she wasn't looking. How he wrote down important company contact numbers on his phone. How he asked employees about their duties and salaries under the guise of friendly interest. When Marcus brought up the issue of joining the company's management again in December, this time more insistently, Evelyn realized that her suspicions might be well-founded. "Evelyn, I'm your husband. I have a right to be involved in the family business," he said during another argument. "This is my business, Marcus. I built it with Gerald long before I met you." "Gerald is dead," Marcus replied sharply, and the cruelty of his words struck Evelyn. "And I'm alive and I'm here. It's time to move on." At that moment, Evelyn saw her husband for the first time without masks and pretense, and what she saw frightened her. January 2025 brought unexpectedly cool weather to Tempe. The temperature dropped to 15 degrees at night, which was almost winter cold for the Sonoran Desert. Evelyn was sitting in her home office, looking over the annual financial reports for Desert Health, when she heard Marcus talking on the phone in the next room. "Yes, I understand that it will take time," he said quietly, clearly not wanting to be overheard. "But the access to the accounts has to be set up correctly. We can't afford any mistakes." Evelyn froze. What accounts was he talking about? And with whom? She quietly approached the door and listened. "Look, Jamie, I know how you feel about this marriage, but everything is going according to plan. Just a little more patience and—" Marcus's voice trailed off as he apparently heard her footsteps. Evelyn quickly returned to her desk, but her hands were shaking as she pretended to read the reports. A few minutes later, Marcus entered the office with a smile that now seemed forced to Evelyn. "Evelyn, dear, I was thinking about our plans for the weekend. How about a trip to Sedona?" I hear the red rocks are especially beautiful in winter. Who were you talking to? She asked bluntly. Marcus was taken aback for a moment. Jamie, just family stuff. Nothing important. What bills were you talking about? Now his face was hard. Evelyn, were you eavesdropping on my private conversation? In my own home? Marcus, what were you talking to your sister about? He sat down across from her, and Evelyn noticed the change in his expression. The usual softness was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. Okay, let's talk frankly, Marcus said. We've been married for 4 months. During that time, I've been practically running your household, helping with everyday decisions, giving you business advice. But formally, I have no rights. What rights? The rights of a spouse, Evelyn. The rights to joint property, to participate in important decisions, He paused. To a fair share in what we are building together. Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus, my business existed 20 years before we met. I didn't build anything with you. But now we're a family, his voice hardened, and families share everything. Or is your prenuptial agreement just a way to make sure I'll be dependent on you for the rest of my life? The word dependent sounded like a slap in the face. Evelyn stood up from the table. I think you should spend the night in the guest room. We both need time to think. Marcus also stood up, and for the first time in all the months they had known each other, Evelyn saw something in his eyes that frightened her. It wasn't hurt or disappointment. It was cold rage. As you say, Mrs. Morgan, he said with bitter irony. After all, it's your house. The next morning, Evelyn woke up alone. Marcus was not in the house, and his car was not in the driveway. She found a note on the kitchen table. Gone to Jamie's. Going to think about our relationship. M. Evelyn used the next few days to meet with Robert Harris. His office in downtown Tempe was an oasis of calm amid the chaos of her thoughts. Robert, I think you were right, she admitted, sitting in the familiar leather chair across from his desk. Marcus has changed. Or maybe he's always been this way, and I just didn't want to see it. Robert listened intently as she recounted her last conversation with her husband. Evelyn, I have to tell you, I've been getting some strange requests over the last few weeks, he finally said. Someone has been trying to get information about the ownership structure of your pharmacies and your will. The requests came through proxies, but I suspect... Marcus, Evelyn finished. Perhaps. Evelyn, I strongly recommend that you review your will. Remove any mention of Marcus as your heir. But we're married. Doesn't he automatically have a right? Your prenuptial agreement prevents that, but a will is a different matter. If something happens to you and your spouse is named as your heir in your will, the prenuptial agreement could be challenged. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. You think he's capable of that? I think a young man with no money who married a rich woman is capable of many things, Robert replied grimly, especially if he feels his plans are falling apart. 3 days later, Marcus returned home. He brought flowers and an apology. Evelyn, I'm sorry, he said, his voice soft and sincere again. I was rude. I just love you so much that I sometimes forget myself. I want to be part of your whole life, including your work. But Evelyn couldn't believe the mask anymore. She could see what was hiding beneath it. Marcus, we need to set boundaries, she said cautiously. My business is separate from our marriage. I'll be happy to discuss work matters with you, but finances and management remain my prerogative. His smile hardened. Of course, dear. As you say. But in the weeks that followed, Marcus's behavior became even more disturbing. He began, accidentally, showing up at pharmacies when Evelyn wasn't there. Employees reported that he was asking questions about suppliers, sales figures, and where important documents were kept. Susan Wright, the company's CFO, called Evelyn in February with concern in her voice. Evelyn, your husband came to the head office today. He said you asked him to pick up copies of last year's tax returns. I didn't give him the documents, but he was very insistent. I didn't ask for anything like that, Evelyn replied, feeling her heart race. Susan, please tell all employees, do not give any documents to anyone without my written permission. No one, including my husband. When Evelyn told Marcus about this at home, his reaction was explosive. You've made me look like a fool, he shouted, pacing around the living room. Your employees now think I'm some kind of crook. You tried to get confidential documents without telling me, Evelyn replied calmly. How was I supposed to take that? As a husband caring about the family business, but you'd rather think of me as a criminal. Marcus, this isn't a family business. How many times do I have to tell you? He stopped abruptly and looked at her with an expression that made Evelyn take a step back. What if it becomes a family business? He said quietly. What if I'm the only heir? What are you talking about? About reality, Evelyn. You're 40 years older than me. Sooner or later, I'll be a widower. And then what? Everything you've built will go to charity? To distant relatives? Evelyn felt nauseous. Marcus, you talk about my death as if you're planning it. Don't be dramatic, he dismissed her. I'm just being realistic, and I think I deserve to know what my future is in this marriage. That evening, Evelyn called Robert. Robert, I want to completely rewrite my will. Remove Marcus from all clauses. Everything should go to a trust or charity. That can be done, replied the lawyer. But Evelyn, maybe you should think about other precautions? What? Divorce. Before it's too late. Evelyn was silent for a long time. Give me some more time. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew she wasn't wrong. March brought a new escalation. Marcus became openly aggressive, demanding and controlling. He started monitoring her phone calls, checking her mail, and demanding a report on every penny she spent. Evelyn, $20,000 for new equipment for the Broadway pharmacy? We didn't talk about that, he said, looking at her bank statements. We don't discuss my business decisions, Marcus. I don't ask you about every $10 you spend on protein. That's different, and you know it. I know. It's my money and my business. His face contorted with anger. Yours, yours, yours. It's all yours. What am I, just an accessory in your life? You're my husband, Marcus, but that doesn't give you the right to control my finances. It doesn't? He stood up and moved closer to her, too close. What if I say it does? What if I say I'm entitled to half of everything you have? Evelyn felt fear, physical fear. Marcus was a young, strong man, and she was a 60-year-old woman. Marcus, get away from me. Or what? Call the police on your own husband? At that moment, Evelyn realized that her marriage had turned into something dangerous. She saw in Marcus's eyes the same expression that victims of domestic violence probably saw before. I'm going to Robert's tomorrow, she said firmly. To rewrite the will completely. Marcus froze. What does that mean? It means you won't get a penny after I die. No pharmacies, no houses, no bank accounts, nothing. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked at her with such an expression that Evelyn regretted her words. Not because she didn't mean them, but because she shouldn't have said them out loud. You can't do this, he finally said very quietly. I can, and I will. Evelyn, there was something pleading in his voice, but his eyes were still burning with anger. We can talk about this. Find a compromise. No, Marcus, the compromises are over. He looked at her for a long time, and Evelyn could see an internal struggle going on in his head. Finally, he nodded. Fine, as you say. But something in his tone made Evelyn realize that this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much more frightening. The next day, March 20th, 2025, Evelyn met with Robert and completely rewrote her will. All of her assets were now to go to a charitable foundation for the elderly. When she returned home that evening, Marcus greeted her with dinner and apologies. Evelyn, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm just so afraid of losing you that I'm acting foolishly. But Evelyn no longer believed his words. She saw who he really was and knew she was in danger. That night, she locked her bedroom door from the inside. For the first time in all the months of their marriage, March 21st, 2025, began like any other Thursday in the Arizona desert. The temperature had already risen to 32 degrees by noon, promising a hot spring day. Evelyn spent the morning at the desert health headquarters, meeting with suppliers and reviewing sales reports. Her mood was gloomy. Yesterday's visit to Robert and the rewriting of the will weighed heavily on her mind. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she returned home, planning to work in her home office. Marcus was out. He had to coach at Elite Fitness until 6 in the evening. Evelyn hoped to use this time to calmly think about her situation and perhaps contact a divorce lawyer. But when she pulled up to the house, Marcus's car was already parked in the driveway. Evelyn entered the house and immediately sensed the tension in the air. Marcus was sitting in the living room with documents in his hands, documents she recognized as a copy of her new will. "How did you get this?" she asked, trying to remain calm. Marcus looked up. There was no anger or resentment in his eyes, only cold, calculating determination. "Robert left a copy on his desk when he went to answer the phone. I just took a picture of it with my phone while you were in the bathroom. You were following me? I was protecting my interests." He stood up, holding the documents. "A charitable foundation, Evelyn? Seriously? You'd rather give millions to strangers than to your husband?" Evelyn walked over to the phone. "I'm calling Robert. You've broken a lot of laws." "Don't!" Marcus's voice hardened. "We're going to settle this here, now." Something in his tone made Evelyn turn around. Marcus was standing between her and the door, and for the first time in all the months they had known each other, she felt real fear. "Marcus, move away. I want to leave." "No." He took a step toward her. "We'll talk. You're going to change the will." "No way." "Evelyn, you don't understand." Marcus spoke slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "I've wasted almost a year of my life on you. A year of courtship, a wedding, this charade of a family life. I'm not walking away empty-handed. It's not a charade. Of course it's a farce." He laughed, but his laughter was cold. "Did you really think a 20-year-old guy could fall in love with a 60-year-old woman? Evelyn, look in the mirror." His words cut like knives, but Evelyn forced herself to stand straight. "So all this time I was playing a role. And I played it well, you have to admit. You were happy, I was patient, but you ruined everything with your distrust and greed." "Greed? It's my money, I earned it. It belongs to both of us now, we're married." Evelyn tried to get around him, but Marcus grabbed her arm, hard, painfully. "Let me go. You're going to change the will. Call Robert right now and tell him you've changed your mind." "No." Marcus squeezed her arm tighter. "Evelyn, don't make me do something I don't want to do." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining reality. I have debts to pay. People who don't like to wait. I need that money." Suddenly, a lot became clear. "You borrowed money using my property as collateral." Marcus didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. "How much?" Evelyn asked. $1.5 million, he finally said, "against the house and the business. If I don't get the money back by the end of the month, you had no right. You don't have access to my assets." "I have connections, Evelyn. People who help for a fee. Documents can be forged, signatures copied." Evelyn felt the ground slipping away from under her feet. "You committed fraud in my name. I secured our future, but only if you return the will to its original form." "Never." Evelyn pulled her hand away and backed toward the window. "I'll tell the police about the debts, about the forged documents." "You won't." Something in his tone made her fall silent. Marcus looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. It was the expression of a man who had made a final decision. "Marcus, we can work this out. I'll help you with the debts, but divorce is inevitable." "No." He shook his head. "Divorce means scandal, investigation, possibly prison, and I'm not going to jail because of some old fool who doesn't know what's best for her." Evelyn ran for the door, but Marcus was faster. He grabbed a heavy glass vase from the mantelpiece, a wedding gift that now seemed cruelly ironic. "I'm sorry, Evelyn, but you chose this path yourself." The last thing Evelyn remembered was the sound of breaking glass and a sharp pain in the back of her head. Then darkness fell. When she regained consciousness, the first thing she felt was the ground beneath her face. Dry, sandy desert soil with the smell of wormwood. Evelyn tried to move and realized she couldn't. Her hands and feet were tied and her mouth was taped shut. She was lying in a hole about a meter deep in her backyard behind the pool, where she and Gerald had once planned to plant a rose garden. A dark figure with a shovel in his hands was leaning over her. "You're awake. Good. I wanted you to understand what's going on." Evelyn tried to scream, but the tape muffled all sound. She could only watch in horror as the figure began throwing dirt into the hole. "You know, this isn't what I planned," said the voice from above, throwing another shovelful of dirt. "I hoped you would be reasonable, that we could live like a normal family until nature took its course. You're not young." The dirt fell on her legs, her stomach, her chest. Evelyn struggled desperately, but the ropes kept her from moving. "But you turned out to be stubborn. Like all old people, you think the world owes you something, that your money will protect you from everything." The earth reached her neck. Evelyn felt panic wash over her as her lungs desperately searched for air. "Don't worry, no one will look for you here. Tomorrow I'll report you missing. I'll be a grief-stricken widower, and in 7 years, when you're officially declared dead, I'll inherit everything despite your stupid will." The last thing Evelyn saw was the Arizona evening sky, painted red by the sunset. Then the earth covered her face, and eternal darkness fell. March 22nd, Friday, 7:30 a.m. Marcus Taylor burst into the Tempe police station in a state that could only be described as panic. "Help! My wife is missing! I can't find her!" The officer on duty, Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, was used to family dramas, but the young man looked genuinely distraught. "Calm down, sir. What's your name?" "Marcus Taylor. My wife is Evelyn Taylor. She didn't come home last night and isn't answering her phone. This isn't like her." "When was the last time you saw her?" "Yesterday morning before work. I was at the gym all day, training. When I got home around 6:30, she wasn't there. I thought she was late from work, but then I started calling her." Rodriguez wrote down the statement, studying the young man. The age difference between the spouses was obvious. Marcus looked no older than 25, while his missing wife, according to her documents, was born in 1964. "Have you contacted her work, her friends?" "Of course. No one has seen her since 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. She was supposed to come home, but—" "Mr. Taylor, did you and your wife have any problems? Any arguments?" Marcus paused for a moment, long enough for an experienced police officer to notice. "No serious problems, just the usual family disagreements, but Evelyn would never just disappear. She has a business, commitments." The case was handed over to Detective Sarah Collins. At 45, Sarah had 20 years of police work behind her, including 5 years in the Phoenix Homicide Department, before moving to the quieter town of Tempe. Divorced and living alone with her cat, Sherlock, she compensated for her personal loneliness with professional meticulousness. Her first interview with Marcus Taylor took place at 11 a.m. that same day. "Mr. Taylor, tell me about your marriage. How long have you been married?" 6 months. We got married last September." "That's a big age difference. How did that affect your relationship?" Marcus looked tired and troubled. "Age was never an issue. Evelyn is an amazing woman. Smart, successful, full of life. We're very happy together." "Tell me about yesterday, in detail." "I got up at 6 in the morning, as usual. Evelyn had already left for work. She had a meeting with suppliers in the morning. I had breakfast and went to the gym. I worked until 6:30, then came home. Evelyn wasn't there, but I wasn't worried. She sometimes stays late." "When did you start to worry?" "Around 9 o'clock in the evening. I called the office. No one was there. I started calling her cell phone, but she didn't answer." Detective Collins took notes, studying the young man's body language. Something about the way he spoke seemed rehearsed. "Mr. Taylor, does your wife have any enemies? Anyone who might wish her harm?" "No, of course not. Everyone loves her. Evelyn is very generous, fair to her employees, and helps local charities." "Any financial problems? Debts?" A momentary pause. "No financial problems. The business is thriving." After the interview, Collins drove to the main Desert Health Pharmacy. Susan Wright, the financial director, confirmed that Evelyn was supposed to return from a meeting at 2 o'clock, but had not shown up. "This is completely out of character for her," Susan said. "Evelyn never misses a meeting without warning, and she always answers her phone." "How was her relationship with her husband?" Susan hesitated. "Detective, can I speak frankly?" "Please." "Many of us were concerned about that marriage. Marcus was very interested in the financial side of the business. He asked a lot of questions and tried to gain access to documents. Evelyn had to instruct everyone not to give him any information without her permission. That was interesting." "When did that happen?" "In February. And last week, Evelyn met with Robert Harris, our lawyer. She looked very upset after the meeting. By Friday evening, the search team had combed the area around the Taylors' home, nearby parks and shopping centers. Evelyn's car was found in the parking lot of Elite Fitness, the same gym where Marcus worked. "That's strange," Marcus said when Collins told him about it. "I don't understand what she could have been doing there. She hasn't been to the gym in months." But the gym manager, Brian Kennedy, told a different story. "Marcus worked until 6 yesterday, that's for sure. But around 2 o'clock he left. He said he had a family emergency. He came back an hour later." When Collins asked Marcus about this, he looked embarrassed. "Yes, I went home to get some medicine for a client. An elderly lady had a seizure and didn't have her pills with her. Evelyn always said that in an emergency we could take medicine from the first aid kit." "What's the client's name?" "Mrs. Garcia. But she had already left when I got back." The story sounded plausible, but Collins decided to check the security cameras on the roads between the gym and the Taylor's house. By the end of the first day of the search, a disturbing picture began to emerge. A successful businesswoman disappeared in broad daylight, leaving her car at her husband's gym. Her husband, who was 40 years younger and had shown a suspicious interest in her finances, had a 1.5-hour window without an alibi at the exact time his wife disappeared. Sarah Collins went to bed on Friday night, firmly convinced that on Saturday morning she would be investigating not a disappearance, but a murder. Saturday, March 23rd, began for Detective Collins with a review of surveillance camera footage. The Tempe Police Department's technical division had worked through the night, analyzing footage from cameras along the route between Elite Fitness and the Taylors' home. "Detective, we have something interesting," said technician David Chen, pointing to the monitor. "Here's Marcus Taylor's car leaving the gym at 2:05 p.m., and here it is returning at 3:43 p.m. But look here." An image from a camera near the Taylor home appeared on the screen. "The car arrives at 2:17 p.m., but doesn't leave until 3:35 p.m. That's not an hour like he claimed. That's over an hour of activity at the house." Collins felt the adrenaline rush through her veins. What about Evelyn's car? Her car left the house at 2:22 p.m., 5 minutes after Marcus arrived. But the driver was wearing a cap and sunglasses. From the size, it looks like a man. Marcus drove the car to the gym to make it look like Evelyn was there, the detective muttered. And then, how did he get back home? This is interesting. At 3:20 p.m., a taxi pulls up to the Taylor's house. The passenger gets out at the neighboring house and walks away. The camera doesn't catch his face, but his build matches Marcus's. Collins had enough for a search warrant. But first, she decided to talk to the neighbors. Mrs. Dorothy Wilson, a 72-year-old retiree who lived across the street, turned out to be an observant witness. "Oh yes, I remember Thursday," she said, pouring the detective tea in her tidy living room. "There was noise coming from the Taylor house all day. First there were screams, a man's and a woman's, then strange noises." "What kind of noises?" "Like someone was digging. Metal on stone, you know? It went on for 2 hours. I thought maybe they were installing a new pool or something." Other neighbors confirmed the strange activity at the Taylor home on Thursday afternoon. Several people saw Marcus carrying tools out to the yard several times. On Sunday morning, Collins obtained a search warrant. A team of forensic investigators arrived at the Mill Avenue home at 9 a.m. Marcus met them at the door, looking tired and distraught. "Detective, have you found out anything? Have you found Evelyn?" "Mr. Taylor, we have a search warrant for your home and property. This is standard procedure in a missing persons investigation." Inside the house, the detectives quickly found signs of a struggle in the living room, drops of blood on the carpet, shards of glass under the sofa. In the bathroom, they found Evelyn's hair with traces of blood in the sink drain. But the most important discovery awaited them in the backyard. "Detective, come here," called forensic scientist James Morgan from behind the pool. "See this area? The ground here has clearly been dug up. And look at these shovel marks." A patch of ground about 2 meters by 1 looked suspicious. The soil was looser than the surrounding area, and some of the plants appeared to have been recently transplanted. "Let's start digging," Collins ordered. Marcus watched from inside the house through the window, and the detective saw his face grow paler with each stroke of the shovel. At 11:30 a.m., the shovel struck something soft. After half an hour of careful work, they discovered the body of Evelyn Taylor, wrapped in a garden tarp, about 1 meter deep. Collins approached the house. where Marcus sat at the kitchen table, staring into space. "Marcus Taylor, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Evelyn Taylor. You have the right to remain silent." He did not resist. When the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he only nodded. "I want to confess," he said quietly. At the police station, Marcus gave a detailed statement. He told them about his debts, the forged documents, and the argument over the will. He spoke monotonously, without emotion, as if describing someone else's life. "I didn't plan to kill her," he told Detective Collins. "I just wanted her to change her will. But she refused. She said she would tell the police everything." "And you decided to kill her?" "I got angry. I grabbed a vase and hit her. I didn't think I hit her that hard. When she fell, I realized it was over. If she survives, I'll go to prison. If she died, I'd go to jail too, but later." "Why did you bury her alive?" Marcus looked up for the first time. "She was unconscious, but she was breathing. I thought maybe it would look like a disappearance rather than a murder." The detective had to summon all his self-control not to express his disgust. The trial in the case of the state of Arizona versus Marcus Taylor began in Maricopa County Court on June 15, 2025. State prosecutor Angela Rodriguez sought the death penalty for first-degree murder with extreme cruelty. The defense tried to prove that it was second-degree murder, a crime committed in the heat of passion. Marcus's lawyer argued that his client did not plan the murder and acted impulsively. But surveillance camera footage, neighbor testimony, and, most importantly, Marcus's own confession left no doubt as to his guilt. Robert Harris testified about the last weeks of Evelyn's life, her fears, and her attempts to protect her property. Jamie Taylor, the killer's sister, admitted that she suspected her brother of having financial motives, but did not think he was capable of murder. "Marcus has always been manipulative," she said with tears in her eyes, "but I never thought he could kill an innocent woman." A medical expert confirmed that Evelyn was alive when she was buried. She died of suffocation after spending several minutes in the ground, fully conscious. On July 25, 2025, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder with special cruelty. Judge Margaret Stone sentenced Marcus Taylor to life in prison without the possibility of parole. "Mr. Taylor," the judge said before handing down the sentence, "you have committed one of the most cold-blooded and calculated crimes I have seen in my 20 years on the bench. You took advantage of the trust and love of an innocent woman and then killed her in the most brutal manner. Society must be protected from people like you." Marcus listened to the sentence without emotion. As he was led away in handcuffs, he turned to the gallery where Jamie was sitting and said, "I'm sorry," but it was too late for forgiveness. According to her last will and testament, all of Evelyn's property went to a charitable foundation that helps the elderly. The house on Mill Avenue was sold, and the money was used to build a daycare center for the elderly. Marcus Taylor is serving a life sentence in an Arizona state prison. His appeals for a review of his case have been denied. Prison records indicate that he is an exemplary inmate, reads business books, and occasionally receives letters from women who write to convicted murderers. Jamie Taylor changed her last name and moved to California. She works as a hospice nurse, dedicating her life to caring for those her brother called a burden on society. Evelyn Taylor's case served as a warning to many elderly people that trust can be deadly and that love does not always protect against cruelty.